Level up your LA Kings experience with Vivid Seats Elite Seats. All the on-ice Kings action with even more exclusive access and rewards. Enjoy great seats to the game in Section 103 along with Yamava Club access and parking included with your purchase. Plus, get a free Team LA Kings shop item at the game. Score your Vivid Seats Elite Seats tickets today and earn perks on each purchase from the only leading ticket company with a rewards program. Experience it live with Vivid Seats, the official partner of the LA Kings. Did you know the LA Kings have their own culinary partner? It's Superfood, celebrating 10 years and over 1 million meals served. Since 2020, the Kings have trusted Superfood to fuel their players. Now through Simply Lunch, you can bring that same performance-driven food to your office. Because when people eat better, they work better. Visit mysuperfood.com. That's mysuperfd.com. Or call 213-973-6145. Qualified companies can enjoy a free lunch for up to 10 managers.
And now lead pass Anže Kopitar driving wide on Pronger in on goal. Shot, score! Anže Kopitar busting around Chris Pronger of all people. Moved in on Jaguar, goes to the forehand and roofs it for his first NHL goal, and this his NHL debut. Anže Kopitar, the youngest King to start the season. Oh, what a great moment. Gets congratulations on the Kings bench. The Kings have tied it up at 1.
Well, whenever you score your first goal in the NHL, you remember it, but what a fashion that Anže Kopitar gets that goal. With that long reach, he gets it out beyond Pronger, comes around him with a lot of patience, beats Jaguar. Just an outstanding goal for Kopitar. Nick, the kid's for real.
You're listening to All the Kings Men, the official podcast of the LA Kings.
Over the logo for LaFerriere. Right wing Kemping. Drops it out high. Clark, left point, swung in front, tip toward the goal. He scores! It's Kopitar! He's done it! Number 11 is 1 of 1 in Los Angeles. He's the new all-time leading scorer in Kings franchise history.
Now, here's your host, Jesse Cohen.
All right, Kings fans, welcome back to another episode of All the Kings Men. Today, we're going to look back on the draft and the draft that brought Anže Kopitar to LA, and the career that the man and I that I'm speaking to have both watched. Nickson joining me. How are you doing today, Nick?
I'm doing great, Jesse. Good to talk to you again. And it's a time all of us have. We knew it was going to come eventually, but we hate to see it come. Right, the end of Anje's career.
Well, listen, he's joining you in retirement. So before we get to Anže Kopitar, how are you enjoying retirement?
Very well. You know, as everybody knows, I retired May 1st of last year after the last Kings game. And I told everybody, including yourself and many others, you know, I wanted to spend more time, you know, playing golf and traveling and watching my grandkids play their sports. And I've done that. You know, I just got back from watching my grandson play baseball. So I've been true to my word, but I have no regrets. I do miss the people that are around the game with the Kings and around the NHL. I do miss doing the games. That was always a thrill, always a kick. But I'm in a good place.
Good. You don't find yourself calling games to yourself in the living room?
No. You know, and I've never done that. Of course, I've watched more Kings games on TV than I ever have in my whole life. Mm-hmm. And, you know, John Kelly's doing a great job. He's a great broadcaster. And Kings fans are fortunate that the Kings were able to add him to the broadcast crew. But, I watch it and I'm a fan. You know, I'm you know, yelling and screaming and cheering and why aren't you doing this and what kind of call is that? You know, so
sure.
Yeah, it's been good.
So we're here to talk about Anže Kopitar, and we particularly wanted to talk to you because we wanted to speak to somebody who has seen every game in his career and someone who was around back when the Kings drafted him. And I had totally forgotten. I was looking into the draft today, and for some reason, Nick, I had completely forgotten that the 2004-2005 season never happened.
Right.
And so for younger fans who maybe don't remember, the mechanism that set the 2005 draft up was this wild lottery where they weighted the past 3 seasons worth of results. And so, the Kings had not been very good, but they had been just good enough in 2002 that they sort of weren't, sitting in the pretty spot to get, a top pick. And it came down to Anaheim or Pittsburgh, and obviously Pittsburgh won, and they got Sidney Crosby. And that I distinctly remember the moment that it came down to Anaheim or Pittsburgh, and obviously we were all rooting for Pittsburgh. And then I don't genuinely remember the entire 2005 draft, Nick, but I remember it getting to 11 and them taking a kid from a country that I had not heard of before. And
that wasn't around 40 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, because Slovenia had previously been part of Yugoslavia.
Yeah.
And I don't think that I thought to myself, oh, well, why would you draft a kid from a country that nobody's ever been drafted from before? But certainly that had, I think the assumption is that that's why he slid to 11, no?
Yeah. Yeah. Dave Taylor was the general manager at the time. And over the years, in talking about that draft, which also included Jonathan Quick in a couple rounds after Kopitar was taken. But Dave and his scouts, watched the international competition. Anže was playing over in Europe, was playing in Sweden for a bit. And, they rated him, pretty high. And when he slipped and didn't go 6th, didn't go 7th, didn't go 8th, the Kings are going, well, we like what we saw in this kid. Big, strong, great reach, good sense for the game. And even back then, management and scouts were telling us he has a good awareness, and he plays a full 200 feet. He plays the entire rink. And when it got to that pick, number 11, Dave just said, we got to go with him. And I know a lot of people questioned his skating. And as we all know, watching him over the last 20 years, that has been no issue at all.
No.
And I think, much like the bigger skilled players that we've seen over the years, including Mario Lemieux, sometimes it looks like they're not skating hard, but, they just eat up the ice so quickly with those long strides. And so it was, the Kings hit a home run, no question about it. You could make the argument that he should have been, well, I don't know. People would say Sidney Crosby's probably one of the 10 best ever. So Crosby, Kopitar should have been.
Yeah.
And I know we talked to Columbus a few years after we took Kopitar, and Kopitar established his game. And Columbus was just going, why didn't we take this guy? He's so freaking good. And, they missed out. Well, 8 or 9 other teams could have had him. But yeah, that draft was unique. And it's interesting, Jess, because I remember watching that on TV when they were pulling the lottery balls for who was going to pick 1 overall. And the Kings, of course, got 11. And then it came down to Anaheim and Pittsburgh, as you mentioned. And we're all saying, well, would it be good if Crosby came to Anaheim?
Right.
Because that would grow the sport in Southern California.
Yeah.
People would come see him in LA. They'd see him in Anaheim. Or does it make Anaheim better? And that's bad for the Kings. So it was kind of, people were up in the air, but it worked out well. Anaheim took Bobby Ryan, if I remember correctly, and then Crosby was a no-brainer at number 1. Interesting draft, that draft year. And whenever we played Pittsburgh and Sidney Crosby over the years, Crosby being first overall in 05, the last 8-9 years, one of the leads to our broadcast was we're looking at 4 future Hall of Famers, Anže Kopitar, Jonathan Quick from the Kings, and Sidney Crosby, Chris Letang, who was part of that draft year from the Pittsburgh Penguins. So both teams did pretty good in 2005.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the results right now, and I remembered that Bobby Ryan went 2nd. Jack Johnson went 3rd to Carolina, though he wound up in LA eventually.
Yeah.
Minnesota took Benoit Pouliot, who I had totally forgotten about. Montreal took Carey Price, so they're probably not complaining about their choice.
Yep.
Columbus took Gilbert Brulé. Chicago, I don't remember how to pronounce this gentleman's name. Jack Skilly? Skilly,
Skilly, yes. Skilly.
San Jose took Devin Setaguchi. Ottawa took Brian Lee. Vancouver took Luc Bourdon, and obviously Luc Bourdon passed away, so no judgment on their decision there. But a bunch of teams. But I mean, so Kopitar was clearly the number 2 pick. If you go back and redraft that, I mean,
sure.
Now here's a good question for you, Nick. I don't know if you'll know the answer to this one, but now I can't. Now the website I'm looking at isn't cooperating. But do you know who finished 3rd overall in points out of that draft? Crosby, obviously, first. Kopitar in 2nd.
For their career?
Yeah, so far.
Well, Letang's still playing.
He's 4th.
He's 4th. That would be my guess. Is it another forward?
It is, yeah.
Okay. First rounder?
Yep. Second rounder.
Second rounder. And is he still playing?
No, he retired at the end of the 2000. Well, I don't know if he retired officially, but the last season he's listed as playing is 2022-23.
Oh, wow. Boy. No, if you gave me the team he started his career with, maybe I'll get it.
Started with Colorado.
Colorado and recently retired.
Played 8 seasons with Colorado. Wound up on Vegas for a few years.
Oh, gosh. I can't think of him right now.
It's Paul Stastny.
Paul Stastny, yeah. And it's interesting because they both came into the league together. Mm-hmm. And I remember when Kopitar's first contract was up, so was Stastny's, because they came in on a 3-year deal like all the rookies do now from the age of 18. And they were comparing the numbers. And I remember reading the Colorado stuff, and Stastny's camp was saying, well, he's got comparable numbers to Kopitar. But as it turned out, nothing against
I mean,
but Anje's career has been that much more fruitful and successful than Stastny. Although Stastny did have a good career.
I find myself frequently saying no disrespect to fill in the blank, and then saying,
right,
but they're not Anže Kopitar, and I never mean it as an insult to whoever I'm talking about. It's just that Anže Kopitar is really that good. And it's funny, Nick, I had also sort of forgotten that he was drafted in 2005, but didn't start his NHL career until 2006 because he spent that year in Sweden.
Yeah.
And of course there was the line, I think it was Andy Murray or Dave Taylor, or whoever said that their job, they'd still have their job if Anže Kopitar had just come over a year earlier.
I think it was Andy Murray. Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure. I think he came over in training camp or the rookie camp the year before he actually started playing. And
I think he did too.
And you could tell that, the hands were there, the reach, the playmaking ability, the awareness, his ability to see things on the ice. And, I remember Mark Crawford was a coach one of Anje's early years, if not his first.
I think he was the first year, yeah.
Yeah, and I talked to Mike Johnston was an assistant with Mark Crawford. Mm-hmm. And I remember talking to Mike one day. He said, what do you think about this kid, Kopitar? He says, without hesitation, he said, he's going to be a franchise player. He's that good.
Yeah.
And this is before any of us would have dared put a label on a young player as a franchise player, but he was spot on.
I mean, that obviously has to bring us to his first career goal, which, I mean, I can't think of many players where their best goal is their first goal. Like maybe Tim Kalani.
I never thought of it that way, but you might be right, Jesse.
Because I mean, no disrespect to Anže Kopitar, but he's no Anže Kopitar. But I mean, his first goal in the NHL, he carries the puck past, sort of peak Sean Pronger and puts it past peak J.S. Giguère. And for anybody who doesn't remember how good that Ducks team was, I mean, that was the year they won the Stanley Cup. Like, they were at the height of their powers, and he made a Hall of Fame defenseman and an incredible goaltender and a Conn Smythe winning goaltender look Like they didn't matter.
Yeah. And that, some players, obviously most players don't score in their first NHL game, but I mean, from that point on, it was the Anže Kopitar that we've known and loved for 20 seasons. The game was so consistent season to season. The offensive capability, the defensive awareness, checking ability matched up against the other team's best players night after night, especially when the Kings were at home. So, yeah, it was and you look back at players the Kings have drafted in the first round. Well, certainly none have had the longevity that Anže did with the Kings, but Drew Doughty would be the next guy, right? In 2008, he's still playing, obviously, but to have that type of impact and be the player you hope that a first round pick is, right? I mean, you all hope to hit home runs, grand slams, and the Kings certainly did with Kopitar and Drew a couple of years later.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just looking at Kopitar's career just year over year. Played over 20 minutes a night in his first season. And it should be pointed out, Jesse, that some fans may not realize this, but if you want a good read on the effectiveness of any player on any team, all you have to do is look at their ice time. Because coaches, I don't know, maybe 20 different coaches with the Kings when I was working for the 44 years. Maybe not that many, but a lot. And they all would say he's playing because he deserves it. He deserves the ice time. So for a young player like him, and Doughty, of course, mirrored that on defense when he came into the league. I mean, that speaks volumes about just their overall ability to be a positive force night after night at such a young age. Yeah, and Kopitar was, so in his rookie, as a 19-year-old, he comes in. The team wasn't terribly good, but there were a lot of players that, you like Craig Conroy was on that team, could have gotten minutes. That was a team with Alex Frolov, Dustin Brown, Mike Camilleri, Derek Armstrong, Patrick O'Sullivan. There were, Oleg Tverdovsky, Tom Kostopoulos was not that young, but he was, young enough. Yeah. And Anže Kopitar came in, was the number one center, was the, of a crop of young, talented forwards, he was very clearly the one that was going to be built around. And you could make the argument that he had a big part in the development of almost just as young Dustin Brown. And they were, of course, line mates for a number of years. I don't know if they were very much at the beginning, but Dustin was the 2003 draft, so they were only 2 years apart in age. But I'm sure Brownie would agree with you that, and agree with us, that playing with a guy like Kopitar can only make you a better player. There was I don't remember how often they played together, but I do remember a game. I don't know why I remember this, but it must have been in the 2007-2008 season. And Kopitar, Brown, and Camilleri were on a line together. And there was a play that the three of them connected on. It was a full 200. I can see it in my head. I'm not even going to try to describe it, but it was just so very clearly a set play between the three of them that wound up being a goal, resulted in a goal. And it was, I mean, I foolishly thought at that time that every young player was going to be there forever. So I thought Michael Camilleri was going to be a King for a lot longer than he was.
Yeah.
But you talked about, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Those draft years, the Kings were able to get some good players. In 2003, we mentioned Brown, but they had a couple of other first round picks that year. One of them turned out to be a very valuable NHL piece for a number of teams, Brian Boyle. As a matter of fact, I think he played against the Kings in the finals for the Rangers. Back in 2014.
I know he played for.
He went to the finals a couple of times, I think.
Yeah, and I know he wound up on the Devils for a while. I just don't remember what year he was. No, you're right. He was on the Rangers in 2014,
Yeah, and he figured out his niche being a big, strong guy. killed penalties well, checking. So there were a lot of good players that were with the team, and that the years preceding Anje's draft and after, and then it just started to all started to blend. And I remember Jim Fox said for years, he says, we'll never know how good a team we are until we get a really good goaltender. And of course, that happened a few years later.
Yeah.
When after a couple of years in the minor leagues, Jonathan Quick was recalled.
Mm-hmm.
And they had Bernier. And that's a story in itself. The two goalies were in the minors together and both playing well. And if I remember correctly, Dean Lombardi, the GM at the time, said, well, Quick has got one more year of pro, so we'll give him the first crack at it. So he comes up and he, wins the next 300 and some games.
Yeah. So, I remember Jonathan Quick playing three games one year and then never went. And then, the next year that was it. It was
Yeah.
Talking about Anže Kopitar, is he a first? I mean, he's got to be first ballot Hall of Fame. Right?
Oh, I without a doubt. I would be shocked. I don't know why you wouldn't vote for him.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at, number one, the longevity, 20 years, the consistency, and this is a stat that I've loved to use over the years. There's only one player in the history of hockey who's led a franchise more in scoring, and that's Gordie Howe.
Yeah.
I think he led Detroit 17 seasons and Anže 15 times. And he's won individual trophies, Lady Byng, Selkes, Mark Messier. He's won 2 Stanley Cups. In the Stanley Cup years, he was the leading scorer in the league. So you can just go on and on and on. And he winds up, he's going to be in the top, 35, 40 scorers of all time.
Currently 38th, yeah.
Okay, 38th, and he's got, 2.5 weeks left. But, 6,000-7,000 skaters have played in the NHL, and to be that, just and the fact, the way he played the game, Jesse, as we all know, people that have covered our sport, the broadcasters, the writers, the journalists, and have watched the Kings play, other players, other coaches, other GMs, they have so much respect for him because of the way he plays the game that and that, as we all know in hockey, it's kind of a tight-knit group, a tight circle. That gets circulated amongst everybody in our sport. And you've never heard anybody say anything bad about Anže Kopitar. And they shouldn't. Even when he goes through stretches where he's not scoring points in 5 or 6 straight games, he's still not hurting you, right?
Yeah.
Because he's killing penalties. He's shutting down the other team's best line. He's helping out Doughty and his defenseman deep in his own zone, bailing out goal. It's just, and I said it years ago, and I can honestly say, as he wraps up his career, it's probably true, at least in my mind. I don't think he's ever played a bad game. And he's played, over 1,500.
Yeah.
You don't look at the points. I mean, he's sacrificed so much for the team to be a better team. And of course, it's been a team during the halcyon years that's relied on defense and goaltending. And he was the key forward that made it a necessity, if you were a forward, to do your own thing defensively and then worry about the offense once we get the puck. So, he's been a special player, and I've said it before, and I'm not shy about saying it again. I think he is the best player in franchise history, certainly forward, based on his resume. It's hard to, differentiate forwards, defense, and goalies, but it's Kopitar, Doughty, Quick. I mean,
yeah.
And I'm sure very few people would disagree with me, but I would respect them if they did. So,
and I would argue the only real crime of his career is that the one season that he did put up massive numbers, the 2017-2018 season, he had 92 points, 35 goals, and was plus 21. He didn't win the Hart Trophy.
Yeah.
In a year where he absolutely deserved it.
Yeah. And again, not so much in this day and age with all of the teams out west, all of the franchises, 3 teams in California, Vegas, Colorado, Seattle, Washington, Vancouver. But even 10, 12 years ago, a lot of people never watched Anže Kopitar enough because of the time difference to appreciate what he does. If you play on the East Coast, you have an advantage over a player on the West Coast. And it's probably still true to this day in some degree, but it shouldn't be, because all of the games are available on cable. All of the games, anybody can watch anything at any given time. But you're right. We're obviously a bit biased, but I think objectively, he was the best player in the league that year.
I mean, Taylor Hall wound up winning it that year, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and the Devils did have a good season, but I get that the award is for a season's work, just that season. But there's no comparison to the two players in their careers. And then again, as you would say, Jesse, no disrespect
right
to Taylor Hall, but yeah, that was Kopitar's year. That everything, and he could have had other seasons in his career where he scored 90 points, but the way the Kings were built, he felt it was better served to do other things to help the team, and the team came first with him.
Well, and I think this is a perfect point of comparison to drill home your point about defense. In that year when Taylor Ward won the Hart Trophy over Anže Kopitar, Hall finished with 93 points. Kopitar had 92. Kopitar was a plus 21. Hall was a minus 14. Kopitar played more than 2 minutes a night average shorthanded. Taylor Hall averaged 6 seconds shorthanded. Yeah. So Anže Kopitar was having the offensive season that Taylor Hall did, while also being the number 1 defensive shutdown center and being a plus 21.
Exactly. Yeah. No. Yeah. You're absolutely right. It's interesting. You go year to year or 5-year segments in his 20-year career, and everything seems to just be the same, right? It just the numbers seem to just speak volumes as to his value to his team season after season, with the ice time, the situational ice time, power play, PK, regular saying, shut down the other team, all this. It's just special player. And
Kopitar took faceoffs, which Taylor Hall did not. Kopitar won. Right. Sorry, I'm fixated on that year. I will be forever. There's a couple quick not winning the Vezina in 12 and Kopitar not winning the Hart in 2018 will forever hurt my feelings. I do want to talk a little bit about Kopitar's time with Dustin Brown as a line mate, because obviously in the playoffs there were all those goals. But there were also a number of regular season plays. I can think of a few. I don't remember the opponents for the games, but a few plays where Kopitar lofted the puck, I don't know, some 80, 90 feet down the ice up in the air, and Brown would go and get it. And it was, I think it happened at least 2 or 3 times. It became sort of a signature play of theirs.
And it kind of carried over for Adrian Kempe, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've seen that once Brownie retired a few years ago. So, just another trick in his arsenal.
But a special relationship between Kopitar and Brown. For, obviously not the breadth of both of their careers, because Brown was drafted a few years early and started his career a few years early, and now Kopitar's had a few years at the end. But the two of them, friends on the ice, friends off the ice, or teammates, line mates on the ice, friends off the ice, and I think the two of them really complemented each other as players and as people.
Yeah, and they both brought intangibles, same intangibles. There's a reason why Brown was a captain and a reason why Kopitar has been the captain since Brown. All those little extra things that help make a team. So, I mean, I'm sure that Kopitar probably played more games with Brown as a line mate than anybody else. That would be just an educated guess, especially in the important years, the Stanley Cup years. That would be true. But and the two of them together. I remember the first playoff run, Stanley Cup run in 2012. Brownie was so physical, and Kopi was so smart and shifty, and they were killing penalties. They were on the power play. Again, matched up. The Brown hit against the Sedin by the bench there in the Vancouver series, and then the St. Louis series, where the two of them teamed up for 2 or 3 shorthanded goals in that series. They were feeling it. You could tell. And that's when, and I've told this story before, after the Kings beat Vancouver, the President's Cup winner that year in 2012, and then they swept St. Louis. I said to Darrell Evans off the air, I said, Darrell, who's going to beat this team?
Yeah.
I mean, and as it turned out, almost nobody else did because they beat, Arizona in 5, and then New Jersey. They were up 3-0 and then won that series to win the Cup. So, yeah, I mean, it just the way they meshed Brown and Kopitar, and the success they had and the team had with the two of them together, pretty special.
So I was looking over Anže Kopitar's career numbers, and he's presently 25th in games played. And I don't know why this matters to me. Maybe you can help me figure it out. In total career points, I think I mentioned he's 38th. But he's ahead of Jerome McGinley, and he's ahead of Alex Delvecchio. And I don't know, Nick, I could have sworn that Alex Delvecchio was the most games played leader in league history, but now I'm looking at it and he's only 15th. My assumption is that I remember that from when I was a kid, and since then 1 through 14 have simply played more games. I thought he was, I guess.
Could have been. Well, it would have. I know Gordie Howe, when Gordie Howe retired, he was number 1.
Okay, maybe I thought Delvecchio was second, and that was like
he might have been. But Gordie retired when in the early '80s, so he had that.
Sure, yeah.
I think because Marlowe Patrick passed him a couple years ago, or did he pass Messier, who passed Howe? I don't know, but Gordie had it for years. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm looking at all the games. It's all guys that have retired in the last, it's Marlowe, Messier, Yager, Francis, Thornton, Chara, Recchi, Chelios, Andrechuk, Stevens, Murphy, Bork, Burns, Ovechkin, Lidstrom, McGinley, then Delvecchio. It's all guys that had their career while I was an adult. So
and there's I was going to say, a lot of those players we both have seen in our lifetimes within the last 30, 40 years. But the original 6 guys, well, the schedule wasn't as long as it is now. So it was sometimes, when I think Gordie started, it was fewer than 60 games or around 60. Then it was 72 forever. And now it's 82. So the old guys like Delvecchio and Howe, and they didn't have the opportunity to play as many games because the teams didn't play as many games. But I remember saying this when the Kings had Marcel Dion, who rarely missed a game, hardly ever got hurt, that there's a reason why the great players don't get hurt a lot, is because I think the way they see the game and the skill set is such where they don't put them in a position, they put themselves in a position to get hurt. Mm-hmm. And you could say that about Kopitar. What's he missed? He missed 15 games this year, maybe 20, 10 early in his career, I know, with an ankle. So
yeah. Oh, that's right. I forgot that he broke his ankle at the end of that one season. I forgot all about that. Yeah. Yeah.
But maybe 40 games tops over 20 seasons. I mean, that's remarkable.
It's funny. I wonder if Anže Kopitar hadn't broken his ankle at the end of the 2010-2011 season. The Kings wind up losing to San Jose in the playoffs that year without Anže Kopitar. I wonder if they have him for that series, if maybe they beat San Jose in that first round matchup. Maybe they don't get Mike Richards. Who knows? Maybe it's a whole cascading sliding doors. different timeline.
Yeah, we can always go back and say what if, right? But it turned out pretty good. Pretty good.
And this is not about Kopitar specifically, though it sort of is. I feel bad for any current or future young potential superstar in LA, because the shadow that Anže Kopitar is going to cast on this franchise could last for decades. I mean, that's how good he is.
Yeah, and there's a very good chance that nobody else will play 20 years with the Kings like Anže did. I mean, Drew probably will as a defenseman. He's, 18 years now. But just the way the business of the sport is and all of sports, players don't stick with one team for their entire career usually, right? Very rare. We were talking about Patrick Marleau and Joe Thornton, Mark Messier. These guys, they played with more than one team throughout their careers, and you think Wayne Gretzky, the greatest of them all, played with 4 teams. So it's something that I hope Kings fans haven't taken for granted, because it has been special, and like we've just talked about, it may never happen again, let alone in our lifetimes.
Yeah.
Only because of the way the game is structured.
I mean, one of the ways that I judge, and it's probably not fair, but one of the ways I judge young players coming in is by Kopitar's first season. Because you talk about how unlikely it is for a player to spend 20 years in one market. In order to do that, you have to come out of the gate as a fully formed star. Like, you have to start at 18 or 19, ready to go.
You have to be a Connor Bedard or a Macklin Celebrini, as we've seen the last couple of years. Leo Carlson down the road in Anaheim, all certainly are off to good starts and on their way to. Certainly, they're going to have long careers. Whether it's with one team remains to be seen. But that's where, you hope. We all hope you're not bad enough to be drafting first overall.
Right.
Certainly not a lot. But you hope that you hit a few home runs like you do at 11th overall with Kopitar, and with Quick. What was he? Third
round, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's, it's, you look back on it, and the thing that impresses me is the longevity and I'll say consistency, but I'll rephrase the consistency to consistent excellence, because basically that's what we've seen from Anže Kopitar night in, night out, not for a bunch of seasons, but for his entire career, which is 20 seasons.
Yeah.
Which is when you break it down, it's mind-boggling. And, part of the consistency is the way he plays the game. That's never wavered. He's played for different coaches, and he hasn't changed his game, because here's something to think about, Jess. All the different coaches Anje's played for, they've never said you've got to change your game, because they realized his game was the right way to play it, right?
Yeah.
So that speaks volumes about Kopi's career as well.
I mean, you could argue he made coaches change their style.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and to this day, I retired last year. Jim Hiller, and before him Todd McClellan, and the coaches before him Daryl Sutter, won the cup. And even though for us in the organization knew that the Kings were trying to be faster and quicker and higher skilled and score more goals, they all said, well, the basis of our team is always built around goaltending and defense. Now, maybe they're just providing lip service to the media. I don't know. But I think most of them honestly believe that was the strength of the team, even though the personnel has changed over the years. But when you've got two of the best players at their position with you year after year that eat up more ice time than most players in the league do, and Kopitar and Doughty, and we've still had pretty good goaltending even since Quick has departed. Why would you change, right?
No,
You have to.
Yeah, lean into your
maybe,
strengths, right?
God forbid the Kings don't make the playoffs this year. Maybe they're going to have to reevaluate. They're going to have to anyway, because they've got to figure out who replaces Kopitar's spot on the roster,
Mm-hmm.
not replaces Kopitar.
Yeah.
That's going to be
Yeah.
hard to do.
Yes, no, exactly. Yeah, it'll be impossible to replace Kopitar, but somebody's got to get those minutes. Yeah.
Somebody's got to get it be over. Who's the number one? That's the big question next year is, who's going to be the top center?
Well, that's what makes hockey so great, Nick. Every year there's a new roster, a new lineup, a new schedule, new everything. Thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate this walk down memory lane for Anže Kopitar's career.
Hey,
and
always
I'm assuming
a
we'll see you at the arena.
And I'll be out there. I've been going to most of the games and sit up in the press box with you guys or down in the seats with the fans. I'm looking forward to the next era of Kings hockey after this season when it's no number 11.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. We'll have a lot to talk about.
It's going to feel real weird.
A lot is going to go on. But, always a pleasure, Jesse. Anytime, and go Kings.
All right, joining me today to share his memories of Anže Kopitar's career, the original LA Kings insider, Rich Hammond. How are you doing today, Rich?
I'm doing great, Jesse. I like hearing that phrase. I miss hearing it. It was the best time of my career. So
as I was thinking about it, I thought, you know what? Anže Kopitar's career is actually older than the insider page as a function of the LA Kings,
That's right.
Official operations. But had you begun the insider page at the Daily News when Kopitar's career began?
No, it was a little while after that. The launch, as it were, Jesse, was the Jack Johnson trade was the one that I will always remember as the thing when I was still at the Daily News. So no, Kopitar was well into his career by the time he got going, and then obviously was a huge part of the insider for a lot of years. So.
Yeah. So then let's just go back to the draft. I don't know if you remember the 2005 draft. Full disclosure, I don't. I mean, I know it happened. I'm sure I was paying attention, but I don't remember paying attention to it. I don't remember having any thoughts about Anže Kopitar. What's your earliest memory? Well, we'll go back to the draft. We'll go back to your earliest memory of when Anže Kopitar hit your radar.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I was never that much of a draft nerd, so I can't say I was scouring the boards. I certainly was aware of him. If I'm remembering correctly, he was the top-ranked European skater, so he was kind of on the radar, but he was such an unknown, as we know. I mean, coming out of Slovenia, had played some in Sweden, but was not... I think everybody saw the talent, but it was one of those, who's going to take the leap? Everybody knew that there was something there, but how high was he going to go? Was he a top 5? Was he a top 10? Was he somewhere later in the first round? So when you saw his name, I remember going, oh, that's interesting, because it wasn't the safe choice. You can put it that way. But I remember, talking to people, scouts, and hearing, no, this guy's legit. He's going to be here sooner rather than later. But there was just that unknown, because he was from so far away and nobody had really seen him. But he hadn't been in juniors in Canada. He'd only played in Sweden. So I think there was a big question mark there and a lot of eagerness to see what he was going to do when he got on the ice.
He made friends with a lot of unlikely people within the organization. So for anybody who doesn't know, like, the relationship between him and Bailey was fascinating early on. How was he to you? You obviously occupied this at the time totally brand new role in sports media. How was he towards you early when you joined the organization as the insider?
Great, and I think people maybe forget or maybe even know. I mean, you listen to him now. He was not a native English speaker. I mean, he worked very hard at that. And was engaging right away, wanted to immerse himself right away. He already had English down. It's not like he was struggling by the time he got here. But very engaging. I distinctly remember Jesse talking to him, and this is a little inside for people who aren't around, but being in El Segundo there, where the main rink used to go out into what was originally the roller hockey rink.
Yeah.
I remember standing there interviewing him, just going, I know I'm going to see this guy again. Like, I was not a scout. I never considered myself to be an expert on prospects, but I just remember talking to him at that first development camp, being like, this is not the last time I'm going to talk to this guy. And even then, very engaging. I think he knew he was preparing himself for an NHL career. And he always had that confidence. He always knew he had that ability. So whether it was on ice or from the media side, whatever it was, I think he was preparing himself to be in the NHL the entire time. And a year later, there he was.
There's this clip they keep playing of him at the game and on the telecast, and it's, it's just an ad, I think, for his night to honor him. But it's him voicing over, footage of him standing in the rink and getting ready and highlights and everything. And he says something along the lines of, and I understand why they have to do it, and he's right to say it, but he says, like, I never dreamed I'd have a career in the NHL. You always hope and dream that you make it somewhere, but I had no idea it was going to last this long and blah, blah, blah. And then you go back and you watch his first couple of games or even talk to somebody who remembers his first camp, like you were saying. It's like, yeah, no, it was pretty obvious. It was pretty obvious right away he was going to last.
Sure, but you understand where he's. I mean,
totally.
Imagine a kid growing up in Slovenia at his age. I mean, what is your model? Who are you looking at in your country to say, oh, I want to be that guy?
And presumably that's why he was drafted 11th and not 2nd or 3rd.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I get it. I mean, even growing up, you like, who's your model? Who's the one you think, oh, I'm going to emulate that person? Mm-hmm. Yes, you can look at other countries and other players, but there's nobody in your own country who you can look at. I mean, obviously you have your dad as a model, a very successful coach, but he didn't have anybody he could look at. So I believe him to a certain extent. But I mean, anybody who watched him, even that first development camp or the rookie camp that they had that year, there's certain guys, Jesse, and I know I'm sure you felt this way before. Even if you don't have a roster, even if you don't have a name next to a number, you look out on the ice and you go, oh, that one's special.
Yes,
and he was absolutely one of those from the very beginning. Among his peers, among drafteds, among prospects, he stood out immediately. And it was, you didn't know how high the ceiling was going to go.
Right.
I'm not going to sit here and say I knew he was headed to the Hockey Hall of Fame 21 years ago, but you knew he was going to be around. And if the Kings were going to have any type of success, he was going to be a big part of that. By the way, shout out to Dave Taylor too. I mean, that's a name that, I mean, I know, well, and people know, but to make that pick and, Robbie Laird back in the day and those guys, like, where are the Kings without Anže Kopitar in that 2005 draft? We're not having the same conversation right now. That's
sure. It's funny you say that. That's one of the things that, when a bona fide legend comes, wraps up, especially in, I think we've all sort of gotten used to a world where smartphones and the internet bombard us with information. So we know everything, right? Like a trade happens, like the Milan Lucic trade happened 10 years ago, and everybody goes, oh, well, we knew who the Kings were going to take in the first round if they hadn't traded that pick. And it's like, we know. And you're like, well, you don't know, but enough interviews have happened and enough information has been spread. Mm-hmm. But I would love to know whether it was Dave Taylor, Laird, Al Murray, like which member of the organization had eyes on him first. Because we've heard interviews from, I always blank on his name, but the general manager of the Columbus Blue Jackets at the time, McLean.
Yeah.
We've heard people kick themselves and publicly take blame for not taking him earlier.
Yeah.
But I don't think we've ever heard anybody in the Kings organization say, I don't even know who the European scout for the Kings would have been back in 2004 when they would have been looking at him.
I was just trying to rack my memory too. I don't know. I'd have to go dig up an old media guide or something.
I doubt it's Christian Ruutu.
Yeah. And just even the footage. I mean, the things that you can see online now, pulling it, you couldn't do that. Like,
you can watch every game in any league on the globe now. And in 2004, there was no chance you were, and there wouldn't have been an Anže Kopitar Facebook page hyping him up in 2004.
Right. So, I mean, you think about that, and I mean, we're talking about hockey here, but you talk about the guts it took to make that move, where that could easily have gone the other way on them and be like, oh my gosh, this guy was just, he's overmatched. But no, I mean, whoever, somebody should step up and take credit for that. I mean, all of those guys were not the ones who were going to be glory seekers, whether it was Dave or Al or Rob Laird. Like they're not going to be the ones to claim. But it's all collective. I mean, somebody's got to file the reports. Somebody's got to look at them and say, let's put these guys in this order. And then somebody's got to have the guts to make the call at the draft. And it's certainly going to go down as one of the, I would argue one of the most important days in Kings franchise history, the day they
unquestionably. And it's such a weird detail that in 2004, the Kings drafted 11th overall in the first round, and they took Lauri Tukkonen, who played 5 games. Yeah. In 2005, they drafted 11th overall in the first round and wound up with Anže Kopitar, who has the most points in franchise history.
Yeah.
And in 2006, they drafted 11th overall in the first round and wound up with Jonathan Bernier, who had a perfectly respectable career, but was never the savior that, he was career corrected by John or market corrected by Jonathan Quick. So
right.
You mentioned the Hall of Fame. I appreciate you joining us. We'll wrap up this chat with this one for you. Is Anže Kopitar a first ballot Hall of Famer?
He better be.
That's okay. That's what I think. I'm glad.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's. Look, I understand. To me, it's a couple things, Jesse. Like, people are going to say the market, right? And I do think that is a factor. Right? Mm-hmm. If this guy plays in Toronto or Montreal or any of the big East Coast markets, he gets more attention, right? Mm-hmm. But to me, it goes deeper than that. It's just when I think of Anže Kopitar, I think of smooth and I think of control, like everything about his game. You don't watch his game and be like, oh my gosh, like just a flashy, like look at that highlight play that he made. But he's somebody who, if you watch him night in and night out for 20 years, I don't know how you could come away thinking anything else than that he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, the control with which he plays the game, the intelligence. I mean, just a guy who I don't want to use the word effortless. I think that's the wrong phrase because you can see the effort. Yeah. He's giving an effort every night, every shift, but it's what he does with that effort. It's just so everything is almost calculated. It's so intelligent on the ice in the defensive zone, where he needs to be, where the puck needs to be. All the years on the power play, quarterbacking things. He's the son of a coach, and it shows up in those ways. And yes, I do think I think he suffers a lot from the fact that a lot of his games started at 10:30 Eastern every night. And I think that's the truth. But he will go down, Jesse, for me, as this generation. He deserves to be in the conversation. We did our top 100 of the expansion era just a couple of years ago, and he got added in. He wasn't in initially. And there were a few of us who kind of banged the table.
Yeah, what?
you got to put this guy in,
yeah.
And we did. We added him the next round. I don't know. I don't see it. I'll listen to the counter argument. I don't think I'm going to believe it because when I think of the last 20 years of NHL hockey, you look at the number of all around players. I don't know how many you can put above him, and based on that alone, the Stanley Cup championships, the Selke lady being a captain, points record. Come on.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Amazing.
We're not talking about this.
And, I feel bad for every young Kings prospect under the age of 24 right now because they're all being compared against the best crop of Kings players in franchise history. And there's no way to live up to it unless you win the Stanley Cup 3 times, which is, pretty tough. I can't remember who said it first, but credit to whoever said it. If his name was Andy and not Anže, and he'd been born in Alberta and not Slovenia, and he'd been drafted to, Toronto or Boston instead of LA, he'd already have his own wing in the Hall of Fame. But
there's no question. You can't convince me otherwise. And I understand that. I've been in the media for 30 years. I understand how media markets work and attention works in covering hockey in Los Angeles. I totally get it. I'm just in agreement with you that if it was a different scenario, this would not even be a conversation. He would be, they'd be getting the plaque ready right now, which they very well might be. They should.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, Rich Hammond, thank you for joining me as always. Appreciate it. Thanks for creating the Insider. And for anybody who doesn't know, if you're a Kings fan and you like seeing stuff on the internet about the LA Kings, you owe a great debt to Rich Hammond. Thanks, Rich.
Thanks, Jesse.